The night was unusually silent in the mist-shrouded village, and even the crickets dared not chirp. Imagine yourself walking down a narrow cobblestone lane under a half-hidden moon, when suddenly you feel, not see, a presence. They say that if you indulge in slander or speak ill of others, an unseen watcher with impossibly long ears listens in. In the deep recesses of rural China, an ancient warning circulates, beware of long ear. Tonight, we journey into that eerie realm, a realm where every whispered rumor and careless word might summon a presence that punishes the unkind with its uncanny judgment. In whispered tones passed from generation to generation, elders caution young ones to mind their words. The legend tells of a mysterious creature whose ears stretch far beyond the normal human span, catching even the softest murmurs. Some believe these ears are not born of malice, but are a divine instrument, a tool for cosmic justice that ensures respect and propriety in every conversation. Over time, however, the tale has grown in both terror and moral gravity. Picture an ancient scroll unfurling in the flickering light of an oil lamp, its faded brush strokes depict a grotesque figure with ears like gossamer curtains, swaying in an otherworldly wind. As you visualize that, let your heart race with anticipation, because our story, like the legend itself, carries both beauty and a sharp warning. In a secluded hamlet nestled among rolling mountains and dense bamboo groves, there lived a man named Liang. Liang was known as a sharp-tongued fellow, a man whose words danced quickly between jest and harsh criticism. His reputation for speaking ill of neighbors and acquaintances was well known, even his family warned him time and again. Yet, as is often the case with those who ignore cautionary tales, Liang's vanity and pride eventually led him to underestimate the power of his own words. One humid summer evening, as golden twilight faded into inky darkness, Liang found himself alone at his modest home on the outskirts of the village. He sat by an open window, idly watching the shadows play on the ground below. In that fleeting moment of solitude, he muttered a careless insult about a neighbor's misfortune, a neighbor whose family had suffered a recent hardship. His voice, although low, carried enough to float on the humid air and ripple through the narrow alleys of the village. No one knew it then, but Liang's words had pierced the veil between the natural and the supernatural. As the hour grew later and silence reigned once more, an inexplicable chill ran down Liang's spine. At first, he dismissed it as a trick of the night air. But soon, a peculiar sound began to echo in the distance, a slow, almost rhythmic rustling, like the sound of wind caressing silk. The sound seemed too deliberate, too pointed. It circled his home, echoing off stone and wood, reaching his ears in an almost sorrowful whisper. In that moment, Liang recalled the old warnings of his childhood, a warning of the creature with long, listening ears, said to be drawn to the hubris and cruelty of careless words. As the rustling grew nearer, the subtle hints of an otherworldly presence sent shivers through his very soul. His heart pounded like a drum in the silent night, each beat a countdown to something he could neither anticipate nor escape. Visualize a slow pan across a dimly lit courtyard. The camera lingers on an open window, then on the darkened path beyond where shadows merge into vague shapes. Somewhere in the gloom, an indistinct form seems to move with deliberate stealth, its outline blurred and distorted by the interplay of moonlight and fog. In that tense stillness, Liang's mind raced, conjuring up every grim tale he had ever heard. The elders spoke of how the creature would materialize on moonless nights, sometimes within the very room of the offender. Its enormous ears would twitch and listen to every word of malice and disrespect, and then, in a manner as swift as it was mysterious, it would exact a peculiar punishment. Some say that its curse would cause one's voice to twist into mocking laughter at one's own expense, while others insist that its curse manifests as an unending echo of every ill word uttered, haunting the offender until they change their ways forever. For Liang, the rustling grew into a sound that was almost too articulate, as if it were piecing together every syllable he had carelessly released. The wind outside seemed to carry his own voice back to him in a distorted mockery. The sound echoed through his room, bouncing off the walls in a disorienting loop. In that moment, a spectral image flickered at the edge of his vision, a dark shape, with ears stretching impossibly downward, swaying and listening intently. His breath caught in his throat as he realized the unimaginable truth. The legend was no myth, it was a living, breathing force now bearing down upon him. The camera shifts to a close-up of Liang's wide, terrified eyes as the sound intensifies. The beat of his heart is nearly audible. In the dim light, the outline of the creature becomes clearer, a figure so oddly proportioned that even the most fantastical of ancient tales would pale in comparison. Every detail of its elongated ears is etched into Liang's memory, a constant reminder of the consequences of his words. At this moment, the narrative pauses, leaving you to wonder what exactly will become of Liang. Is this creature merely a spectral punisher, or does it embody a deeper, almost cosmic moral force? In traditional Chinese philosophy, there exists an ancient idea that every action, every word spoken, carries an intrinsic weight, a resonance that shapes both destiny and character. The tale of Long Ear is a reminder that the universe, in its mysterious balance, listens and responds. It is a fable woven from the threads of morality, humility, and the timeless understanding that our voices have the power to build or to destroy. For generations, the villagers have silently witnessed inexplicable happenings, a whispered warning here, a fleeting glimpse of a shadow there. Some claim that if you venture into the forest at night, you might overhear the creature's soft, sorrowful lament, as if it mourns the needless cruelty of human speech. And still, the legend endures, passed down with both reverence and fear. Now, as Liang trembled in his dim room, the spectral figure hovered just beyond the threshold. The creature's presence was not overtly aggressive, instead, it exuded an air of profound sadness and unspoken admonishment, a silent plea for gentler words, for kinder hearts. At that moment, Liang understood too late that his careless cruelty had summoned a force of retribution that was both inevitable and inexorable. The visual shifts once again. See a montage of ancient calligraphy, depicting the moral teachings of revered sages alongside illustrations of haunted rural landscapes. The juxtaposition creates a stark reminder, a tapestry of images that captures both the beauty and the harsh lessons of old folklore. In the deep silence that followed, Liang's room filled with a gentle, sorrowful hum, a continuous reminder of every unkind word he had spoken. The hum was like an echo from beyond, filling his senses and heralding a transformation in his very soul. And as the creature's elongated ears faded slowly into the night, Liang was left alone with the weight of his transgressions, a burden that would haunt him with every word he ever uttered thereafter. This chilling encounter does more than terrify, it embodies a timeless lesson. In a world where gossip and malice can spread like wildfire, the legend of Long Ear stands as a solemn reminder: speak with care, for the winds are always listening. And as our story lingers in the cool night air, we are left to wonder, are our words truly our own, or do they summon forces beyond our control? As you sit with this question, let the darkness outside your window remind you that sometimes, the silent watcher is never far away. And as the screen slowly fades into a misty expanse of shadow and light, remember, in every conversation, there might be ears, long and watchful, waiting for just one careless word. The uneasy hush that had befallen Liang's home soon spread like a whispered contagion through the village. In the days that followed his harrowing encounter, every hushed conversation and furtive glance was charged with the silent dread of a retribution that walked unseen. As the first light of dawn struggled through shifting mists over the winding mountain roads, villagers began recounting tales that, until then, had belonged only to the realm of myth. On a chilly morning, an elderly farmer named Wen gathered his few grandchildren under the eaves of his modest courtyard. He recounted the old legends with a voice that trembled both from age and some unspoken sorrow. Long ago, when began, our ancestors believed that every word we speak carries a weight, a vibration that echoes in the halls of destiny. And if our tongues, like hungry beasts, feast upon cruelty and malice, there comes a day when the echoes return with a vengeance. As Wen's words drifted over the attentive faces of the small circle, the camera would slowly pan over the weathered inscriptions on stone tablets housed in a nearby temple, their characters faded yet imbued with a timeless admonition: be mindful, for the world always listens. That very afternoon, as a gentle rain fell and blurred the edges of the world outside, whispers began circulating around the market square. Women, while meticulously arranging bundles of firewood, exchanged worried glances. Men who paused at the edge of the bustling crowd furrowed their brows and cast nervous looks toward the darkened hills, as if they expected the spectral watcher to emerge from the swirling mists at any moment. There was talk of a strange phenomenon, a soft, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to echo every unkind word, an auditory reminder that no utterance goes unaccounted for. One shopkeeper, a stout man named Jen, recalled a peculiar incident that occurred on the previous night. I closed my shop late, he murmured to a friend while stocking his shelves, and on my way home, I heard not just the pitter-patter of rain but a sound, like a murmur echoing my own curses. I thought it was the wind at first, but there was something deliberate about it. It was as if the night itself condemned my careless words. His eyes, darting between shadows and light, betrayed the lingering terror of that moment. In a modest tea house on the outskirts of the village, a place where time seemed to slow as the fragrant steam of oolong mingled with the earthy scent of bamboo, the village elder, Masterjan, met with a small gathering of locals. Known for his quiet wisdom and gentle demeanor, Masterjan had long been the guardian of oral history and local law. Leaning forward as if to impart a secret, he explained, "There are forces beyond our sight that maintain the balance of our world. The long ear is not born solely to punish, but rather to remind us that our words shape our destiny. When we speak ill, we unleash dark ripples that no one can later smooth over." His eyes shone with conviction as he paused, allowing every syllable to sink deep into the hearts of his listeners. As his explanation unfolded, the visual might shift to atmospheric stock footage, slow-motion shots of dew-covered bamboo, ancient calligraphy unfurling on a scroll in a quiet study, and the delicate interplay of light and shadow over a centuries-old village pathway. The soft notes of a traditional Guzheng melody underscore his words, echoing the ancient truth that every utterance, however transient, leaves an indelible mark on the tapestry of fate. News of mysterious happenings soon reached the neighboring hamlets. In one such hamlet, a young woman named Mai recounted how, on a moonless night, she had caught sight of a long, sinewy shadow gliding past her window. Mai's voice, trembling yet resolute, described how the sensation of being watched awakened an inner regret for harsh words she had once spoken to a close friend. "I never imagined that my idle anger could summon something so real," she confessed, her reflection captured in a dim, flickering lantern light. "I now understand that the lesson is not merely in fearing the unknown, but in learning the weight of every word." In hushed meetings late into the night, villagers debated what these ominous signs might portend. Some insisted that the long ear was an ancient spirit, perhaps once a mortal wronged by injustice, condemned by the heavens to listen eternally for words of malice. Others, more pragmatic, viewed it as a metaphor, a personification of the village's conscience urging them to live in harmony and respect. Yet, in every retelling of these accounts, there was an unspoken recognition that the entity was something far more tangible than folklore alone. Back in Liang's home, the atmosphere was equally charged with an eerie transformation. Where once fear had gripped him in the dead of night, a profound humility now tempered his voice and actions. The haunting hum that had tormented him every evening gradually diminished to a persistent, soft reminder, a constant, inward echo urging penitence and mindfulness. His days were spent in quiet reflection, and slowly, the harsh sound of his tongue was replaced by thoughtful words of kindness. The camera would linger on the subtle changes in Liang's countenance, the deepening of his eyes, the softening of his furrowed brow, and finally the tentative smile that emerged as he became more considerate of others. As the days turned into weeks, the collective experience began to yield observable changes in village life. The once noisy gatherings became gentle conversations laden with empathy rather than contempt. Disputes that might have escalated into bitter quarrels were now resolved with measured words and sincere apologies. It was as if the moral lesson of long ear had seeped into the very soil of the hamlet, urging each inhabitant to temper pride with prudence. Yet, even amid these quiet resolutions, a lingering question persisted in the minds of the villagers, especially that of Master Shen. He often wondered if the spirit of Long Ear truly existed as a supernatural enforcer or if it was simply an ancient parable, a tale designed to remind people of the eternal law of cause and effect. In late-night discussions by the flickering light of oil lamps, he posited that perhaps the true power of the legend lay not in the fear it inspired, but in its ability to catalyze self-reckoning. "We may never see the creature with our eyes," he would say softly, "but its lesson remains as clear as the cry of the wind over our fields." The tension in the narrative deepens when one day, a traveler from a distant province arrived in the village. His journey, filled with bizarre encounters and eerie phenomena from regions both near and far, lent new weight to the legend. In whispered exchanges with local elders, he recounted experiences of hearing voices in the wind and catching fleeting glimpses of silhouettes with disproportionately long ears. His story, embroidered with hints of urban legends and ancient wisdom, served to validate the villagers' own fearful accounts. Stock footage of misty, ancient forests and deserted mountain trails can be intercut with his somber recounting, amplifying the strangeness and universality of the phenomenon. As the traveler rested in the village for a few days, he observed a noticeable shift in the villagers' demeanor. Those who once had a propensity for biting remarks now spoke with gentler cadence, as if aware that every word was a seed planted in a garden that might someday yield retribution. In a poignant interview-style scene, he might confess to the camera, "I have seen many places in my travels, and though every culture has its ghost stories, this legend of the long ear, this vigilant watcher, seems to remind each soul that our words have an echo in eternity." In the shadows of twilight, as the village began to settle into an uneasy peace, the camera returns to Masterson. His gaze, distant and contemplative, lingers on an ancient inscription carved into the wood of his courtyard. "Remember," he intoned, "that the spirit of our legends lives not only in the tales we tell, but in the actions we take. Let our voices be as the soft murmur of the wind, gentle, respectful, and ever mindful of the world that listens." There, in the interplay of lamplight and dusk, the legacy of Long Ear weaved its subtle magic into the hearts of the people. The admonition grew into a living tradition, a spell of self-discipline passed down from one generation to the next. And while questions still hovered like the remnants of a vanishing mist, was the creature real, or a mirror of our own inner conscience, the villagers agreed on one eternal truth: in a world where every word has power, a single careless utterance can summon consequences far beyond what the mind can comprehend. As our tale now lingers on the cusp of dawn, the second chapter of this uncanny legend leaves us with a reflective pause. We see a village transformed by its own myth, a community now waking to the profound realization that every whispered word might carry the weight of destiny. And as the camera pulls back to reveal the sprawling mountains and fog-draped valleys, one can almost hear the soft, persistent murmur of the wind, a reminder that, indeed, some forces never sleep, and some lessons echo through time. The mystery deepens, and the journey into the realm of Long Ear continues, promising further revelations about the delicate interplay between words and consequence, between human nature and the unseen, eternal watcher. In the stillness that followed the traveler's departure, the village seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief, almost as if the very air had been cleansed by the solemn lessons learned. Over time, the initial terror that had gripped every heart gave way to a quiet transformation. The once caustic words that had sparked the curse were replaced by murmurs of apology and promises to speak with care. The villagers, now deeply aware that every word carried weight beyond its fleeting sound, began cultivating compassion and thoughtfulness in every conversation. One chilly evening, as a soft drizzle blurred the outlines of the ancient stone paths, Liang, now a changed man, stepped out into the cool night. His eyes, once clouded by hubris, now reflected deep regret and a newfound determination to mend the past. He approached the dilapidated temple at the village's heart, where an inscription in faded calligraphy reminded all, "Let every utterance be gentle, for even silence has its voice." Standing before the inscription, he whispered apologies to those he had wronged, and with each sincere word his voice lost its earlier venom. The subtle echo of his remorse mingled with the soft rustle of leaves, an echo that no longer carried reproach, but rather a solemn promise of change. Meanwhile, Masterson gathered the elders and the young around a flickering bonfire. In the dancing glow, he recounted how ancient lore, passed down through countless generations, spoke of an unseen guardian whose elongated ears listened in the depths of night, not merely to punish, but to remind those who dared to sow discord that every action creates ripples in the fabric of fate. His measured tone carried a wisdom that resonated like a timeless mantra. Consider each word you speak as a seed, let it be one that grows in kindness rather than withers in malice. For in the silence of the night, the world listens, and so does the spirit of Long Ear. As his words sank in, the villagers exchanged looks filled with understanding and a quiet hope that perhaps, through their transformation, they could honor the old legend in a way that healed rather than harmed. In the weeks that followed, small yet profound changes wove their way into daily life. Disputes in the narrow lanes were now resolved with calm dialogue, neighbors who once traded bitter words now shared meals and heartfelt greetings. The curse, once a feared specter, had become a catalyst for growth. Even the wind seemed to carry a gentler tune, a soft, persistent murmur that underscored the realization that every conversation was a sacred act. One foggy dawn, as the first rays of sunlight struggled through the lingering mist, Liang, accompanied by a few repentant villagers, visited the old well on the village outskirts, a place steeped in lore and whispered secrets. There, on the ancient stone, was carved an image of a figure with long, flowing ears that reached toward the heavens. In that moment, Liang understood that the entity was not a merciless demon, but rather a mirror reflecting the consequences of human words. It was a reminder that while darkness may lurk in every careless utterance, there is always a chance for light when one chooses empathy over cruelty. The traveler's final departure left behind not an empty void, but a legacy, a tradition born from fear that evolved into a perpetual call for mindfulness. As seasons turned, the legend of Long Ear became woven into the cultural tapestry of the village. Parents would caution their children with gentle smiles and soft voices, recounting the tale as both a fable and a solemn truth, that every spoken word has the power to alter destinies. In the final, reflective moments of our tale, the camera slowly pans over a serene vista at dusk, the ancient hills draped in twilight, fields rustling with the promise of renewal, and the village alive with the quiet murmur of respectful voices. The words of Master Shan echo in the background, softly narrated. May we learn that the strength of our language lies not in its sharpness, but in its ability to nurture harmony. For in the silence of the night and the whisper of the wind, the world, ever vigilant, listens, and our hearts must answer in kind. As the screen fades gently to black, the final image remains, a luminous symbol carved in stone that reads, in elegant script, "Speak softly, and let your spirit be heard." In that fading glow, we are left with the enduring truth that the legend of Long Ear is not merely a tale of retribution, but a beacon guiding us to cherish the power of our own words, allowing them to echo with compassion rather than regret. And so the story concludes, leaving us to ponder the quiet reverberations of every whispered thought, every kind or unkind utterance, in a world where the unseen always listens.